Brittney Scott is a licensed therapist and mother daughter coach with a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. She uses her expertise and experience as a licensed therapist to help women heal their relationships with their mother or heal from painful dynamics in their mother daughter relationship. As an eldest daughter and mother of a daughter, she takes her lived experience and knowledge of how women relate to each other to help them to break cycles unique to their specific lineage. Welcome, Brittney.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about what is such unique work that you do, and then through the lens of your astrology chart, because it's always the most fun to do this when it's someone that's so niche down, like someone that's so clear about specifically how they help people, because it's so apparent in your chart and it's just so like poetic and beautiful to see it through that lens, you know?
Yeah, okay, so I don't know anything about astrology aside from I'm a Capricorn, so I'm
Hmm.
excited for you to read my chart and tell me why, basically, because
Yeah, why it feels so aligned.
yeah.
For sure. Yeah. So we were just talking before we started recording here, and Brittney was talking about how she hasn't really done a deep dive. She's just kind of surface level looked at things here and there online, but not usually gone to the layer of putting in her accurate birth time. So it was questionable whether her rising and moon sign were accurate. So, anyways, we are going to do that deep dive today where it counts as an entrepreneur in your business, both what you do, but also how you do it, how you're making your money, and then also what you're doing, how you're serving. So we'll start with the big three. One of them you already know that you are a Capricorn sun. You're also a Capricorn moon. So that's one where, like you said, you might not have been super clear because it's so early there that if you didn't have the right birth time, it might have told you something else. So we'll start there, and there's going to be like a fun twist, as is the case with complex humans and the paradoxes within us, that is going to offset what I'm going to speak about really heavily here. Because when it comes to your Capricorn attunement and embodiment, we're talking about your sun and your moon, but also you just have so much going on there. I mean, your sun and your moon is like, the biggest, most foundational parts of you. So start there. But then you've also got your North Node, your Descendant, your Uranus, and your Neptune. So you've just got this super loaded Capricorn stellium. And so I like to really break down. We'll see. You can let me know what you already know or have related to around Capricorn from the pop astrology angle that you've had.
Okay.
I like to really break it down to the basic elements that make up this archetype. So before the pop interpretation or whatever you might have heard, really getting down to the essence of it. And so we're talking about the earth element, and each of the elements in the zodiac express in three modes of movement. And with Capricorn, it's outward moving. So from within you, projected out into the world. Oftentimes, when we look at it that way, some of the other things we've heard about it start to make sense. What does it mean to project the earth element out? Well, it's like what we're building in the world, it's the actual structures, it's the things that we can touch, see, and grow. And it's our success, right? Like our worldly success. However, we're putting what we've got going on in here, our karma and our dharma and our service, and how we actually project that out into structures and ways that people can work with us, and ultimately legacies that we leave behind. So, before I say much more about that, I'm just curious because you've just got so much Capricorn in your chart. How has that territory been weighted in your experience and your priorities in your life?
I think I resonated with how you described from like inward and kind of going out because I've thought about a lot of my work in other people, not
Mm,
necessarily in myself. I feel so lit up and so like I'm on the right track and I feel so good when I see what I've done reflected in other people.
mm,
When I get
mhm,
the feedback from a mother daughter couple on, you saved our relationship, or I'm so happy I have my mom back, or hey, we just wanted to check in. Look on this trip we took together when before we
mhm.
even met you, we weren't talking on the phone. And so seeing the work that I do reflected in other people, that is where I feel the most aligned.
That's so cool.
Yeah, like my legacy for me is what other people are doing. I
Yeah.
don't know, I feel like it has nothing to do with me. It's about what I see around me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so cool because you're talking about with Capricorn, how do we make it real? Like I was saying, something that you can actually like tangible reality, how the work that you've done has impacted other people. And all of this Capricorn for you is in mostly in your seventh house. And that's another piece that without your exact birth time, you can't know this layer of it. And everything that we just said about that Capricorn motivation, the
Yeah.
house is what area of your actual lived experience, your life, where that wants to ground into. And so the seventh house is other people and the
Oh,
mirrors that
wow.
other people are. Yeah, that couldn't be more perfect. It's also, though, so it's split between the sixth house and the seventh house. So seventh house is other people, sixth house is health and healing and that incremental, detail oriented process where we go into, I don't know, it makes me think of like the game Operation,
Oh,
like
yeah. Yes. Yeah.
for
I mean,
that.
and being a therapist and a coach, like life coaching, that's what I'm doing
Yeah.
every day.
That's really cool. And then, so to bring in the other of this trifecta that is your rising sign, which is Cancer, we're looking at this Cancer Capricorn axis that makes up so much of what's going on in your chart. And I think that's so interesting too. And this is what I just find really fascinating about your work, anyways, not just from the perspective of an astrologer, is that most of us have heard of and are aware of and hear all the time about, as women, our daddy issues. But you
Mhm.
don't hear people talk about the mommy
Mommy
issues.
issues.
For women, that's not something that really is talked about. In a lot of ways, that is that access. Bringing in another layer too here is you have your south node and north node happening on that axis too. In layman's terms, that's just saying that south node is kind of where we came from, north node is where we're headed. So past life patterns to destiny type direction.
Mhm.
And so for you, it's going from Cancer to Capricorn. And so a lot of times what we look at there is how are you using the gifts of where you came from to get where you're meant to go in this life? And so being rooted in that Cancer, like mama, healing, family dynamic background to ultimately like do that healing work to take you to that Capricorn side of being able to stand up tall and feel supported and be successful in this world. I would love to hear because that's so interesting that you ended up finding that angle of women's mommy issues. What's that like for you to explore and serve in that way in a world where everyone's talking about women's daddy issues?
So I started my work at working with teenagers,
Hmm.
mostly teen girls. Being a teenager is a time where you want to separate from your parents because you're trying to figure out who you are in this world, how you belong in it, who you want to be outside of how you're parented. That is when I really learned about how girls attach to their moms by trying to separate from them. And I realized that so much of therapy and healing, like within the US, I'm not sure about other countries, we focus so much on patriarchal standards that we tie daddy issues to girls and make it their problem. When really the issue and how we're behaving and relating to others is really coming from our moms because that's who we're copying and that's who we're learning from. We learn to be a woman in the world by what our moms taught us or by what we watched our moms do, not by what our dads did or didn't do. There was a disconnect. None of this makes any sense in why we look at girls' behaviors in the absence of their fathers. I'm like, I think the absence of the father affects the mom, which affects the daughter. And so we're looking at
Mm.
mommy issues, not daddy issues. And so that's when I went on this learning journey of just learning how women attach to each other and how girls attach to their moms. And I was like, this is actually making sense. Dads play a huge role. Of course they do. It's not to take them out. But I'm like, patriarchy has caused us to look at how men hurt us or don't and how they cause us to act in certain ways. They don't have that much power. They really don't. I think our moms have way more power.
God, and to your
And
point, that's just such a revolutionary idea that sounds so simple once I hear you say it, that basically it's just putting their issues on us and making that our responsibility to solve the issues of the
right.
patriarchy.
And
I'm a
like it's
little blown
our
away right now.
problem.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, wow. And then how much simpler it is of who's actually modeling for us, who we're going to become.
Yeah. And yeah, who are we copying? Who are we trying to be like or not in some cases? Like with
Yeah,
mommy issues, we're trying not to be our moms. And
yeah.
yeah.
Wow, I'm having so much light up for me right now since you said that with my own stuff with my mom as an example. I remember that moment. There's a hard break where, up until a certain point, I found myself sort of unconsciously just having her same priorities. And in a really simplified way, it was like I had a early on boyfriend. We made a house really early. And all of a sudden, one day, I just woke up and realized that I had made a theme for every room and sort of had this Martha Stewart like orientation to decorating. I'm an Aquarius. I actually have a really weird style. And one day I just woke up and was like, this feels like my mom's house. This doesn't even feel like mine.
Right. And without knowing, I always think it's funny the idea that, oh my God, I just became my mom.
Yeah.
And when people are like, how did I let this happen?
Yeah.
That's because you didn't do anything else. It was destined to happen because that's all you knew.
Right. And that's so interesting just to track what that individuation process then is that you get catapulted into. You're like, oh, okay, now time to become my own person. Oh, wow. There must be just so many interesting things that come up once the mom and the daughter together are able to identify that maybe got distorted or framed in different ways. And it's like, oh, that's all that was happening. She just needed to individuate herself after realizing the ways in which she had become you.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
mom needs to accept that it's not against her.
Yeah. Right.
It's two different
Wow.
people.
What a beautiful way to look at what that path is, again, from Cancer to Capricorn. By the way, most people, especially not as young as you are, we're going to talk about your proximity to your Saturn return, but to be so aligned with the direction of that path, a lot of times in the earlier part of our life, it's like we feel a pull backwards to our south node. It's just kind of like the comfort zone. And it takes a lot of conscious awareness and effort to retrain ourselves essentially to be able to go the other way, to lean the other way. The fact that not only is it a testament to how the work that you've done around that, but then how it now shows up in the work that you do and the way you support other people, that path is very much turning that individuation process is from that safe Cancer space, which may have its potential issues, but ultimately that nurturing, safe, it makes me think of like the fetal position type
Yeah.
space. And as we move toward Capricorn, it's really being able to straight spine, stand up tall, and feel supported. Such a big part of that is that we have the support that we need to be our own person. I'm hearing that a lot in the work that you support is helping mothers to be able to change their role from being strictly the nurturer for their daughters to being more of that almost masculine support for them as they go through that process.
Yes, yeah. And allow them to, like, we have to let our daughters be the person they're trying to be, not the person that we envision for them.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah. It's just so interesting when looking at it as more motherly or feminine roles of parenting and masculine, more fatherly roles of parenting, that there is an inherent journey where the mother is walking that path alongside her daughter
mhm.
to learn to play more of that full spectrum of support for her.
Yeah.
Wow, what a beautiful embodiment of that axis. That's just such a big part of your chart, both with your rising and descendant, so who you are versus who you attract and are designed to support, but then also that past life gifts to more of your future oriented destiny of how you help people. So good. Let's shift gears a little bit from that. I want to look at something transitioning more into the money. This is your livelihood, your business side of things. So I like to look at something called the money mode, which is another axis of your chart. And there's three different styles of how people typically orient themselves to earning and investing. So receiving and growing their money. And it's really interesting because you're the second of this series to have the one that's actually rarer for entrepreneurs. I like to relate them to relationship models. So there's the people that are the serial monogamists, the
Okay.
people that are the lifers, and the people that are the, which one did I not say? Serial, monogamist, lifer, and polyamorous. Okay, so these are the three. So typically, entrepreneurs are either the serial monogamist or the polyamorous because they're more likely to like get bored easily and juggle lots of different things and actually get off on that to some extent. It's like, okay, onto this thing, onto this thing.
Mhm.
The rarer, as I've seen, or at least the ones that I attract for entrepreneurs, are the more lifer people, which is your signature for your money mode. Typically, for that, it's like you're much more likely to feel fulfilled and aligned finding kind of that one thing, whether for someone that's not an entrepreneur, it's that one company that they're going to go the distance with. For entrepreneurs, it's typically like a signature program or a signature service. You're so niche down. That's another way that it expresses. You know specifically what you are going the distance with your work. So I'm curious with that, what was your path to arriving at making this choice and going all in and knowing this is the one type of support to have your whole practice orbit around, particularly as a therapist, where I'm sure you started out in a broader capacity supporting people? What was that journey like, essentially discovering your money mode and being like, oh, I need to just find and commit to my one thing?
Yeah. It's so interesting that you say that. I think part of it may be rooted in a little bit of fear of taking risk. Me and money haven't always got along. There's some like scarcity mindset there. But really niching down and letting my practice be focused on this one thing, I think it was a thing that just lit me up.
Yeah.
There are aspects of mental health that I know I'm not cut out for. For example, I'll just say like heavy mental health. So, being in the hospital setting, there's a joke on social media of taking a grippy sock vacation. Have you heard that?
Mm,
So, basically, having a mental breakdown or having heavy mental health issues that you get hospitalized.
okay.
And so they're joking that it's your grippy sock vacation,
Okay.
which I think is funny.
Yeah.
But so I'm not cut out for that.
Yeah.
I made the attempt, I tried it. I would have crashed and burned really fast. If I can define it and why maybe it works for me is I'm working to help change people's futures
Mm,
from a relational standpoint.
mhm.
Community and people and relationships and seeing people connect and invest in each other. That is like everything to me.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe a hospital setting with heavier mental health issues didn't feel the same. I think
Mm,
in that setting, it was like I'm helping somebody sometimes survive longer or to manage this episode until the next one comes.
yeah.
And for some people, that is what they're supposed to do. And for
Mhm.
me, it feels so isolating, I think,
Yeah.
where I feel like I'm supposed to be in community and helping other people be in community with each other. And once I figured that out, I was like, oh, it's relationships, it's
Right.
community building, it's getting people attached to other people. Because then if I can get them attached to another person, I can step away.
Right.
They don't need
Yeah.
me. Let me go and get these people connected and
Yeah.
then these people connected. And the world is a better place then.
That's a really great way to frame like that difference between symptom management, like you
Mhm.
said, getting from one episode to the next versus actually empowering people to find their own way to success.
Mm.
You said it so well. If I help them to create a support structure in their own family dynamic, then they won't need you forever, which I think is common in the therapy world sometimes. It's less about graduating and more just offering a comforting band aid where it's needed every step of
Right.
the way. I love that. I do want to just mirror back to you that the most common reaction that I get when I talk about someone's money mode is that they were judging themselves around that thing. So the fact that you have framed that as that you are afraid of taking risks,
Yeah.
while there may be some truth there, I also just want to really reiterate you're designed this way. When it comes to making your money, even though you are surrounded by probably a lot more examples, particularly in the entrepreneurial space, of people that are not like you, that are more likely to be fulfilled and designed to try new things a lot and go on to the next thing. That's their design. For you, you really do have this relatively unique design in the entrepreneurial world of finding your thing. So
Yeah.
just want to reflect
Okay.
that back to you.
Well, that
Yeah.
makes me feel better because
Yeah.
sometimes maybe I shouldn't be so afraid. Maybe I should just try this other thing, or maybe I should add this in, and then it just feels so misaligned, or it
Yeah.
feels like maybe too scary or heavy, where I'm like, nope, just stay right here. I'm good here.
Yeah, there's a lot of, and besides that, you have a fixed money mode, also just having all that Capricorn, you're really designed to create a solid foundation that you know is going to support you and just let it be that. It's more about steering a couple degrees right and left of a cruise ship rather than flipping a bitch in a car or something. There's a steadiness about you that's just like part of what works for you. Whereas, I mean, I'm not that way, just as an example. We're all designed differently. I'm the polyamorous money mode. I'm all over the place, Aquarius.
Yeah.
So remembering that, particularly comparing yourself to other people when it comes to this, if that's part of what's making you think that it's
Yeah.
fear. If you're actually feeling fear, that's another thing. But some people are designed to be all over the place. Some people are really designed to like find a solid foundation and plot their course and stick to it.
Yeah. That's actually
So
so freeing. I can manage that versus
yeah.
like seeing other people or even listening to other coaches
Yeah.
and, oh, okay, no, I don't have to be you.
No.
I'm good over here.
It's just so funny because, like, for me, that would never work for me. I would get so bored. I have to constantly be stimulating myself and almost like cross. I learn something over here and I apply it over here. And it's like three
Mhm.
pointers all the time. For someone that's not designed that way, I can see that being absolutely draining and chaotic and not the
Yep.
way.
Chaotic wasn't mine. I would just lose my mind. It feels disorganized. It feels, yeah, chaotic. Like, okay, what am I even doing? None of it would make sense.
Yeah. Let's go a little deeper into that. I mentioned it's like earning and investing, kind of these
Mhm.
two sides of this axis. So, your second house of earning, which is both how you actually make your money, but it's also that inside job of your sense of self worth and feeling aligned with abundance, trusting that you're going to receive what you need when you need it. So, it's kind of that inner and outer dimension. For you, it is ruled by Leo. What makes you a fixed money mode is that movement that I was talking about, each element expressing in a different mode of movement. Yours is inward, it's receptive. So it's from out there receiving it into here. So opposite of what we were talking about with Capricorn. But in this case with Leo, we're talking about the fire element. It's receiving fire and inspiration. We're talking about inspiration, creativity, the authenticity that's very magnetic because you're just like being this really authentic, creative expression of yourself. So, when it comes to your money house here, keeping in mind it's fixed though, right? So, it's not necessarily about following your every inspiration to try this, try that, because we're talking about fixed money mode. It's more like your resources and your income being a way to support your creativity. So, having something that's stable enough and feeling that sense of security so that you feel free and open and have the capacity to create and dance with the
Mhm.
muse and have that more light and playful space because those other needs are met and accounted for. Does
Yeah.
that resonate with your exploration with how you make your money?
Maybe.
Let me pose a question. Times when you've really allowed yourself to basically not be like everybody else and just feel free to express and embody exactly as you feel called to, as you feel inspired to, versus times when you've more put yourself in a box or tried to copy or model yourself after somebody else when it doesn't feel like yours. How has that affected your actual ability to bring in money?
I made less money when I was following what other people said worked or following steps. They're like, if you just do this, then this will happen, or this is what a private practice is supposed to look like.
Especially in your field, I would imagine. There's a lot
Yeah.
of prescriptive, like, this is how it's
Yes.
done. Hmm.
Yeah. And it feels like boxing me in,
Yeah.
then I don't care about it. If I have to do it this way, I'd rather not do it. I can look back and think of times where I was doing exactly what I thought was expected of me, maybe out of fear because other
Hmm.
people told me I was supposed to.
Yeah.
Those are the times where I marketed less, where I talked about my services less. I can remember a time where, like, when I first started my private practice, I did exactly the steps people told me to take. And clients were canceling, or they were no showing, or they were rescheduling. I was actually happy about it.
Yeah.
I was like, this means no money, but actually, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
I'd rather just not make money than this actually be the thing that works.
Do something inauthentic.
And it didn't
Yeah.
work.
Well, it's interesting that you said the fear on that side of it, the fear of doing something that didn't feel aligned. And then before you mentioned the fear of taking a risk. I'm just like seeing it as this different kind of thing. It's more the being boxed in versus liberating yourself to just do what you know is right for you.
Mm.
When you're in that world of comparing those choices and those inspirations to what other people have told you, I can kind of see how that would register as fear. But ultimately, it's your design to parse out the two. This is how I was told to do it that doesn't work for me. And as soon as you can identify what feels more aligned from you, that's just your way. That's not even a
Yeah.
risk. It's
Yeah,
almost the opposite.
right. A lot of that is that those emotions show up the exact same as fear. When it shows up in your body, where I feel it in my body, it all
Hmm.
feels like fear
Hmm.
until I make sense of it.
Yeah. But it's almost a straying from. And it makes me
Yeah.
think of the very hardwired origin of that, which is straying from the tribe. Doing something
Mm.
differently at one point meant excommunication. And so your needs not getting met. And so death.
Right.
It's a very hardwired fear to individuate. I see the full circle in that, that ultimately that's that scary territory that you support mothers and daughters with,
Yes. Yeah. Help them get through that to what the other side looks like.
which is ultimately empowering.
Hmm.
So let's bring in the other side of this, which is the investing, where I really like to redefine and broaden our understanding of what investing is. I'm not just talking about what asset classes you put your money in to grow it. I'm talking about anything that you put your time, energy, and potentially money into now to support the future that you're creating and calling in. So that delayed success, putting your vote in now through your effort and energy for what you're building and is to come. So with that definition, yours is Aquarius, which we're again talking about that receptive inward movement, but in this case of the air element. So they have a common thread of authenticity. With Aquarius, though, it's typically the actual ideas themselves, the new mental ideas that come through where you're like, oh, revolutionary kind of ideas. I could do it this way. I get
Hmm.
that everyone else in my field is doing it this way, but here's a crazy idea that sounds fun to experiment with. And that's the other biggie is when it comes to straying from the examples that we've been shown, ultimately it's just an experimentation and then seeing, does this fit? And for you, when it comes to what you are willing to invest your time and energy into, because I'm sure when you started to create your practice differently, it was essentially a sacrifice of money at first because it takes time
Right.
to build things out before they become profitable. Potentially also takes more time for other people to be receptive to because they're used to a certain way that therapy is presented. Ultimately, like a space of innovation and experimentation to find what works for you. I'm curious if that path, I know it resonates based on what you've talked about with the way that you've created your practice, but in terms of like investing and return, how has that path showed up for you?
I'm not sure. It's not a concept I've thought about. So hearing it is like I'm trying to reflect it back and I'm not sure.
One thing that occurs to me is you mentioned a fear of taking risks.
Mhm.
And when it comes to investing, ultimately, how risky do we want to be
Yeah.
for the return that we are potentially setting ourselves up for? More risk, more reward.
Yeah.
I do feel like there's more questions than answers coming up around this right now, but
Mhm.
I do see some pieces fitting together of things that were framed as fearful are actually just your territory of investing. And how do you want to turn the dial on that risk, and how much time and energy you're willing to devote into the innovations that you feel called to explore and experiment with?
Yeah. It's definitely so this is making risk taking or fear of risk taking mean something different. I really appreciate that because that feels freeing. I think I took a big risk in, or not even risk, a investment in niching down the way that I did
Yeah.
because I have all of my marketing and everything I put out there has made it clear who I work with and how I work with them, which means I'm looking for a very specific subset of the population,
Right.
which that's a huge investment, knowing that as a therapist, I could just open my doors and anyone can come in,
Yeah.
but that feels so out of alignment. That feels riskier than the work that I'm doing now. For myself, maybe
Yeah.
money wise, it may work, but
Yeah.
for who I am, it's like, what am I even doing here?
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really good way to frame that. That was not one of the aspects of Aquarius that I focused on. Keeping in mind, where basically I'm giving some voice that occurs to me to speak to essentially putting everything that ever is, was, or could be into 12 boxes or 12 buckets. So there's a lot in there. What you just highlighted is this other side of Aquarius, which is about really being willing to be different and to stand out and to differentiate yourself. That's a really cool way, not only to embody this part of your chart, but to frame what niching down is. Because you're right, it's absolutely a risky investment that you're making into absolutely owning your individual angle. Yeah, that's a really cool way to look at niching. So, I want to bring in another piece here that most people do not know about the moment of their birth, which I find unfortunate. And I'm a rather big advocate for educating people around in these spaces, which is the moon phase that you were born under.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, you probably have an idea of about what moon phase we're in from moment to moment. Even people that don't pay attention to the stuff, we see the moon in the sky, we see when it's smaller or bigger, and there's a pretty obvious correlation between how inward or social we feel and how crazy the collective feels. There's more
You're right.
buzz during the full moon. So it's just this really loud, obvious, energetic of the moment that's had such a big impact and imprint on us the moment of our birth, potentially so much more so than these other subtler energies that we're talking about. And it's just not something that's included when people pull their chart. So I love to reveal that both to give some perspective to what is a lens that you might take for granted or just not be aware of, like, oh, doesn't everyone see things this way? Well, no, it's this is the lens that you were born under. But also to know what your time of the month is, that you it's like getting back to your home base energetically on the cycle. So it's when you potentially might feel the most grounded, the most resourced.
Okay.
So, all that lead up to say, you were born during a waning crescent moon. So, right before a new moon, as the cycle is dissolving and closing and going back to the dark moon. Is that something that you've noticed timing wise when the moon is shrinking and getting small and down to a sliver, that you felt particularly connected with yourself or a different kind of capacity?
So I'm going to be honest, I have never paid attention to that.
Okay.
But I can say most of the time when I actually take the time to look at the moon, it's in that phase.
Okay. So it's like when she calls to you,
Right.
basically.
That'll be the
Yeah.
time where I'm like, where is it? It's
Yeah.
when it looks like that. Of course, I notice a full moon. Who doesn't notice a full moon? That phase of the moon is when I actually notice myself look for it.
Yeah. That's so cool. Okay, so to tell you some things around like the energetics of that are just part of your
Yeah.
lens. And this was the part that I was leading up to where I'm like, okay, we're going to talk all about this Capricorn stuff that's so much about structure and what's real and being very oriented toward worldly success and seeing what's happening in the world. This is a quite, I would argue, just as loud signature in your chart that really offsets that. Because if you think about it, with the cycle, we have the new moon, and then there's this moving out into the world. Things start to manifest, the moon's getting brighter, there's more outward type of involvement. And then we get to that full expression of the full moon. And then the other half, as it's waning, it's a coming back to ourselves and letting it all go and going back to that space of infinite potential and possibility. So you're almost there. It's right around the corner. Everything's almost completely dissolved and let go in this world. So, one thing that I find interesting in terms of the therapy type role that you play is it's almost the anthropologist. There's so much reflection around what you just saw and everything that transpired during that cycle. So, there's a very reflective, it's also the wise elder vibe. We can overlay a lifetime on that cycle. Capricorn already creates that atmosphere, that personality type sort of, but having an almost fully waned moon is also that wise elder. The other archetype would be like a death doula, because you're like connected to the other side. It's this moment where we're giving the last of it away, any other worldly attachments. That occurs to me for you just around being a healer and the space that you're holding for people to let go of whatever they may be attaching to that is keeping them from being able to step into that space of like new potential and new possibility in their relationships.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Everything you said, I feel like is, I guess, for lack of better words, a part of me. There are times where I feel like I'm giving so much and I want to. This feels good. I'm putting so much out there. And then there are times, and I don't know if it happens within a whole month. Like I said, I've never fully paid attention to it to know cycles and when certain things are happening. But there are times where I can recognize that I don't want to. I don't want to give of myself. I don't want to put things out there. I'm more like in a shell, and I need this chance to, whatever I've been putting out, I need to put in.
Yeah.
And I need a chance to just take a break.
Yeah.
And then the let go piece. So, right behind me here, that pink paper, my daughter made a book, but behind that paper, what it's sitting on is a Buddha board. So, you take water and you write on it, and then it's part of the art of letting go
Yeah.
because it completely disappears in a matter of 30 seconds.
Right.
There are times where I'm like, I'm holding on to too much, or I'm holding on to things that don't belong to me, or just stuff that I don't want anymore. Maybe it's an emotion or a thought or something I feel like I'm supposed to be doing. I use that board to help me let go of it. Actually visualizing seeing it disappear on the board
Yeah.
is cool. And the death doula part, I'm not fully sure what that embodies or what that means exactly, but I can say my relationship with death, I feel like, has been different. I've lost all but one grandparent, a cousin, and probably some more, but those come to mind immediately. And sadness and tears and grief have never come.
Mm.
Oh, and my uncle too. Although missing those people, I have never felt a yearning or a why or this should not have happened. I
Yeah.
need these people back. I have never felt the grief that I help clients walk through.
Yeah. You just have an ingrained acceptance.
Yeah, just it happened. This is a part of life. Some happen too soon, but we know one day it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Even losing my grandma, I remember I was 8 in second grade. It just was what it was.
Yeah.
And sometimes I feel so weird sitting at funerals and I see people crying and I'm like, can I make some tears for them?
Yeah.
Can I seem
Right.
sad? Because I feel like on the outside, I'm just like, here we are.
Yeah.
And I've never been able to.
My lead up to this part of your chart was I just feel like it's part of the paradox of who you are and this beautiful anchor or like antidote or balance to what is ultimately such, like you said, a focus and investment in this world and the people in it and your work. And it's a lot of leaning out and giving. You have this other part where you're just as attuned to that space that you can go back to be able to just set it all down, let it all go, and go that other direction and lean back into yourself. It also sounds like, besides an acceptance of that they're gone, it's an acceptance in you. It's like an inside job of just feeling at peace around your orientation toward them after they pass.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I miss them for
Yeah.
sure, but it's weird because I can help clients through grief and I get it. I know what it means. I
Mhm.
know what's happening, but I've never felt grief that strong.
Yeah. I would guess that it's also partly you're so connected to the other side. It's an acceptance, but it's also not as much of a letting go or something because you're still connected to that space where you can still feel them.
I've never voiced that before.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I can see how, like how we were talking about comparing your money mode to most of what you see,
Mhm.
it seems like fear. So then comparing your relationship to grief, that is absolutely just how you're designed. I can see how it could feel like guilt comparing yourself to how other people experience it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do another big pivot here. I want to just point briefly to you took my money attachment style quiz, which I imagine you probably appreciated. I'm sure you already knew about the attachment styles and all that. It's probably a part of your work. I found that someone's attachment style in intimate relating is not necessarily the same as it is with money. But for you, you have the anxious attachment style, which, as you saw, part of the way that I frame that, even though I don't love the words that are part of that system that I adopted to make it relatable, but there's a superpower in it too. It shows you where your room for growth is to get to security, but it also has a positive side to it too. So, with anxious attachment to money, it's often like a hypervigilance, not giving it room to breathe in what we were talking about with that path that mothers go on in relating to their daughters. It's leaning more into hovering over it and not trusting it so that you don't feel safe to just step away and know that it's got you. I'm curious, anything that you want to share about what that path has been for you to where you are now with it, related to what you know about the path to healthy relating in general. And I'm curious if you've made that connection with your path with money.
I think this year has been me making that connection because, like I said, me and money, we just did not get along before. But the idea of hovering and constantly thinking about it and
Mm-hmm.
watching it and look at it,
Mm-hmm.
that is what I've done. There are times where I have woken up in the middle of the night worried about my bank account and where all the money has gone and when more is coming back and what this
Mm-hmm.
is going to mean and what I can't do or what I can't pay for. My husband now notices. He'll notice when I'm anxious or I'm worried or something is wrong. And he's like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, "I don't know, nothing. You're thinking about money again." I was like,
Yeah.
"Stop paying attention to that." Yes, I
Yeah.
am thinking about money.
Yeah.
So anxious attachment felt like absolutely true because it
Yeah.
is like anxious thinking about it all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as this year and like relating to money, what I've been trying to do is not feeling so I get anxious attached, even just attached at all. I feel like me getting to a secure attachment is me just breaking attachment in the first place,
Mm-hmm.
not worrying about what this is going to mean or where the money is going to come from or what's going to happen. And knowing that I have the luxury and the privilege of knowing I have somewhere to fall back on. There are people who don't have the privilege that I have, in that if shit hit the fan, sorry if I'm not allowed to say that. If things just went so far left, I can go back to my mom's house.
Yeah.
I understand that that is a privilege that I have. I won't
Mm-hmm.
have to pay a single bill in her house. Everything will be fine and I will be okay. And so reminding myself of that has been helping me this year to take a step back and actually take care of myself with money. I think I've spent so much time trying to take care of other people,
Yeah.
and the same way that I do with like community and helping others and bringing people together. Oh, yeah, you can't pay my fee. That's okay. What can you pay? Great.
Yeah.
We'll just take that.
Mm-hmm.
And taking care of others have meant that I didn't take care of me. That made money even more scarier because I'm doing great work and people are loving this, but I can't fully live my life. I'm worried about, no, let's not get the extra, or, I can't do that this time. And I've spent so much time making sure others could have access to me and what I do, and that they are going to be okay, that I haven't taken care of myself.
Yeah, one thing that I hear in that that is such a reference point for in this conversation is from that Cancer to Capricorn. You kind of have this pattern that pulls you back of that Cancer carrying flexibility, like just being willing to meet them where they're at, because what's most important is that you're supporting them. And like you said, making your work accessible to them. Whereas what is challenging you this life, which you've definitely leaned into in other areas, but maybe not so much when it comes to this, is like with Capricorn, just having the structure of your fee schedule and the
Mm.
boundaries to be able to enforce that. I can definitely see your work in that. Around the other thing that comes to mind with that structure, you mentioned being woken up in the middle of the night just because there's almost like this haunting of it feeling like it's vying for your attention in
Mm.
inappropriate moments. Have you adopted a rhythmic, reliable money check-in so that your money knows that you'll be there and doesn't have to kind of like poke you when you're trying to sleep?
Yes, I've gotten better at that, of
Yeah.
actually setting aside time to open up the bank accounts,
Yeah.
type things into the budget spreadsheet, and actually see
Mhm.
what's happening, and that helps a lot. And also what I've done is those times, which are now happening less, thankfully,
Yeah.
when I do wake up or when I am highly anxious about it, I just write down the thoughts
Yeah.
and get them out of my head. That way I don't
Mhm.
have to worry about it. I can just go back and read, okay, now that I have time to actually sit here with these thoughts, what were y'all trying to tell me? And then go through it. So they've both helped.
I like that. It sounds like you've separated out, okay, when I'm feeling that haunting, there's something like emotional or mental to deal with. And then I've created a separate, reliable space to actually tend my money so
Mhm.
those don't become so entangled.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Well, the other thing that I want to end with here that feels very relevant is, are you familiar at all with your Saturn return and the timing of that? Not at all.
No.
Okay. So I am so glad to be able to reflect this to you. This is one of the things when I started studying astrology, there were like cute, fun things of, oh, that resonates, that resonates. But when I went through my Saturn return, I was like, whoa, okay. This was literally a death, rebirth, rite of passage that I wouldn't have been able to identify otherwise because it was like a 6 year in the making. It wasn't something that I just noticed overnight. So many things I could say about it, but your Saturn return is actually one angle that I think you'll really appreciate is it's like how women have these differentiators of maiden, mother, and crone. Those three cycles, those overlay with your Saturn cycles. So that's one way that they play out. And basically, it's youth, adulthood, and elderhood. So our Saturn return, I mean, it's a slow moving planet. So I look at the Saturn return as taking about 6 years. It starts at about 27, it peaks at about 30, and you're fully on the other side at about 33, which, of course, your 33rd birthday is less than a
Yes.
month from this recording.
Yes.
So, just wanting to reflect to you that you have been in a huge, challenging rite of passage when it comes to all that Capricorn stuff, which is so much of your work and what it means for you to feel grounded and aligned and on track. Saturn and Capricorn. Saturn is the planet counterpart of Capricorn. They speak the same language. A lot of what you've been confronted with that we've talked about it in terms of fear of risk or how much you're straying from what you've been told and taught. Basically, your Saturn return is when you take stock of all of those influences, everything that's in your sphere. It's almost like Saturn's ring is closing around you, and you decide what is going to stay in that circle and what is not. And so you're setting the stage for what you are going to commit to deepening into and through over the course of the next 30 years of your adult chapter. Just wanting to reflect that to you as like a punctuation right now, that like I'm hearing a lot of things for you have been shifting in the last year and more recently. And it's the first 27 to 30, you're really riding the first, going deeper and deeper into it. Then those last 3 years, these last 3 years for you have been a kind of integration of all that you went through and learned and experienced. But there's a landing that's happening for you right now of really landing in that second Saturn cycle where a lot of those lessons and shifts and confrontations are going to just, the ripples are just going to become normalized now in
Yeah.
terms of what you're capable of moving forward.
Oh, thank you for that. I did not know what that meant, but I can tell you, I told a friend maybe 3 months ago, I said, I don't know what's happening, but I don't feel like the same person. Nothing
Mhm.
is making sense. And I feel like I'm becoming this whole new person that's ready to just burn down all the thoughts I had before.
Mhm.
And she said, okay, well, just slow down
Hand me the
and make
torch.
sense of this first. Yeah, she's like, don't do anything crazy, but
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I have
Yeah.
felt that.
Yeah.
So it's nice to know we're coming to an end because it has been exhausting.
It's big and take it or leave it, but it would probably be worth looking into just enough to understand. I feel like the biggest tragedy in this world around people not knowing about that is this whole cultural narrative and expectation that at 18 we're supposed to identify as an adult and know what we want to do with our lives. It's really more about now.
Yes.
you
Yes.
know in terms of helping mothers and daughters and like what those rite of passage and transitions are, we don't really know
No.
until
Yeah.
we get into our 30s. And we're not supposed to. And in fact, if we choose and commit too early, a lot of times we do have to burn a lot more down because we weren't
Yes.
really ready to make those commitments
Yeah.
yet.
And in the mother daughter work, I think I'll leave that here because it aligns with what you just said. I talk about the 6 stages of the mother daughter relationship. 18 is one stage.
Hmm.
Parenting and mothering does not end at 18. I would even say if we're going to adjust how the mother daughter relationship looks like from childhood to adulthood, 18 is not the marker.
Right.
At 18, sure, there's more freedom for the daughter and she gets to make decisions. So the mom steps from being the guide to walking alongside, maybe holding her hand. Mom can't let go of that hand until well after 26 or 27.
Mhm.
She's still there, but she's not the guide. She's like, okay, hang on. I'm still here. We're going to move a little bit slower, but I'm not guiding you. I'm now walking alongside you in your decisions. So, yes, even that 18 is not the marker on when things change for us.
That's
So,
so cool that your work has found it to be 27 because I'm just like seeing the mother hands the daughter off to Saturn. Okay, now go out through your rite of passage.
that's interesting. Full
Yeah,
circle.
right? Indeed. And with that, I want to encourage anyone listening right now that's a mother or a daughter to reach out to Brittney. Where can people find you and engage with your work, particularly now that you are entering into this whole new second Saturn cycle of how you offer this work?
Yeah, so on social media, I am mostly on Instagram and Threads. You'll find me at the Brittany Scott. And my website to see more about my work or read my blog or find my podcast, it's brittnymscott.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone listening. And Brittney, thank you so much for this conversation. This was really
Yes.
fun.
Thank you for introducing all of this to me. Like I said before, I
Mhm.
only knew I was a Capricorn. I didn't know anything else.
My pleasure. Well, I hope this continues to serve you forward.